they're harassed sheep without a shepherd. If you look at, people pick on Bill Gates, right? For doing all the odd things that he does.
Mm.
And yet, if you look at him, the way he speaks, if I may do an impression here in my frame here, he talks kind of like this. That's a mental illness.
Welcome to the Bear Trapped podcast. And as you've seen by the opening credit, we have just...
Yeah, this is obviously post-edit again, as we always do, because we shit at, starting off the thing.
We just want to say it's 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
We've been speaking to, as you know, because
it's in the
I
title.
haven't told him this bit, not just the title.
Oh, go on.
We're going to have a clip at the beginning.
Oh, sick, right.
So you've seen the hook. You know we've had on... It were Bart Sibrel.
What a gent.
Literally from the... I mean, he liked our pitch because we pitched him. You've been on the biggest.
Yeah.
Why not come on the smallest? So...
And he did.
And he loved it.
Yeah.
And it is honestly genuinely the nicest fella I have ever met.
I know you wanted to try and go toe-to-toe, but he's compelling.
It's not I wanted to go
well, not you mean, but you got to be right.
I wanted to try and counter him, but I can't anymore. This was before we watched his documentary, and then we watched the documentary at Sibrel.com.
Sibrel.com, yeah.
Go watch it, it's free.
I will watch the other things as well, because he named a few other things, and I think this one,
at the end, it's going to play another quote from somebody, but, I mean, we didn't go to the moon.
We obviously didn't.
And I was so for going to the moon, and I'm not even American, so it's not even patriotic.
I think it's because it's it's a human achievement, so you naturally band together, don't you? So if it were like Yorkshire versus Lancashire, the Yorkshires would band together, so would they. If it's Britain versus, you'll band together. But if it's extraterrestrial, I won't say aliens, but if it's...
No, it's extra off the Earth.
Yeah, if it's off the Earth, then as the humans, you band together and you automatically defend it.
I know, and I were willing to... I genuinely was willing to, but... it's the moon thing when they were halfway to the moon. And he said the same. I said this to Jay before we started the podcast, and then he said the same thing. That's what he saw. And why would they have to fake it?
There's no reason to.
No.
What's the reason to fake something if it's really happening?
Yeah. But anyway, we don't want to carry on because you can go watch the conversation.
Oh, we need...
What?
Right.
So, anyway, guys, stop Jay's nonsense.
Yeah, I'm chatting.
Jay's chatting shit. No new there.
Yeah. Bart Sibrel's on.
I can't believe it either. Literally, how we came on this tiny little pod of ours.
Him, yeah.
But amazing guy. Please go to Sibrel.com. I listen to audiobooks while I'm working.
Yeah.
I've just started Moonman. Please go download them because listen to the message because it ain't just about getting rid of the moon landings in history. He's on about that this is a deeper thing with the deep state, and I'm a conspiracy theorist. I love loads of conspiracy theories. And it's all one thing. And I genuinely think, as he says, if you can reveal this to be true and everyone goes, then all the other lies will come out of the woodwork. And I think that's what he wants. I think that's his mission. But you'll have to wait till the end because he tells you what his mission is.
Just stick around, watch I can't never do this.
It's 61 subscribers.
Do you know what? What, it's 62?
It was 62. I think it must have been a vegan because I often say jokingly, fuck vegans. It's a joke. I don't really mean it. I do mean it. Don't mean it. Maybe
you've literally single-handedly
got rid of a sub.
Got rid of a sub.
But the vegan don't want to be here anyway.
We've gone backwards.
That is all jokes, by the way. We've gone upwards though. From the beginning of his last video, we had 51. We've gone 10. So I mean, we're on the road to 100, bro.
We are, mate. We are.
And this might be the video that gets it there because we've got loads more guests as well. So just subscribe, and then you'll see the guests. There'll be
a little thing in corner somewhere. Paul's gonna keep doing it. Don't know how to do it.
He won't be anywhere, J points. But we've got some honestly genuine, interesting guys from photographers, some extreme sports people, an adventurer that flew solo across the Atlantic. Andy did something across. I'm not going to go into
don't matter
that.
anyway,
I forgot, but we've got loads of guests.
I don't even have a clue about any of these.
He doesn't know anything. Subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Peace.
Enjoy.
Oh.
Peace.
I said peace when you said enjoy.
I did
Peace.
it on purpose. Peace.
Now, are we recording now? Are we ready to begin?
Yeah.
well-
We're ready. Yeah. We start
Are we
recording way
recording
before,
now?
just so we don't miss
Don't
anything.
want to miss all this good crap here.
No, this is why we do
Very
it.
lively.
This is why
Don't
we
wanna
do
throw
it.
that in.
Well,
You ready? Hit
yeah.
record?
Yeah.
Let's go. Welcome, Bart Sibrel, to the Bear Trap Podcast. We can't believe you're here. Thank you very much, as we've just said. I want to start on what the first question, if you don't mind. A long time ago, I heard that Buzz Aldrin punched a reporter. 2 weeks ago, I found out, was that you?
Yeah, it was me. Back when I had hair.
I know, I've seen the clip. That's why I didn't think it was you, because you had a big full head of hair, didn't you? What happened there?
I'm sorry?
What happened? Why did he attack you?
Well, I had interviewed him previously for a film called Astronauts Gone Wild. If your viewers want to see the first film, I highly recommend watching A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon first.
Yeah.
Go to Sibrel.com, S as in Sam, I-B as in boy, R-E-L, Sibrel.com. On the homepage, there are 4 videos, including A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. That cost nearly $1 million. It was financed by someone who builds rockets for NASA, multimillionaire who knows the moon landings are fake, who gave me the money to expose it. And we discovered footage of them faking being halfway to the moon. I was producing it under the theory maybe they faked it. And then we found concrete proof that just blew my mind. I'm like, oh my gosh, they really did fake the moon landing. And then a few years go by, and I guess from watching, childhood drama, court TV shows, why not swear? Swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon. So, having a millionaire backing us, we tracked down through private detectives several Apollo astronauts and either found them at public events if they didn't give interviews or had a sit-down interview with them. Now, Astronauts Gone Wild is one of the clips of my book, Moonman. So you can see that for free. Just go to Sibrel.com, click on the top button, Moonman video links. And one of them is Astronauts Gone Wild, where I have a sit-down interview with Buzz Aldrin, who at the time thought that the moon landing fraud had been publicly exposed by ABC News, because my company was called ABC Digital, and he got them confused.
Right.
And he said, that he was just a passenger. Him and Neil Armstrong were passengers.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
Not piloting the vehicle to the moon. They were just looping around the Earth for 8 days. He said, talk to the administrator of NASA. He said, oh, and this makes you a real famous person for having discovered this. What an ego you must have who want to propel your career like this. Well, how could I become a famous journalist if I'm wrong? You see?
Yeah.
So he made 2 admissions that I was correct. And when he realized that, he threatened to sue me if I showed those admissions, which are in the film. And then after that, I came up with the idea of tracking down some of the astronauts. Some gave sit-down interviews and some wouldn't. So we tracked them down at public events. And there was a Japanese crew who I had worked with before on a TV special in Tokyo about the moon landing fraud. They were to interview him, and I was their surprise guest. I didn't wake up that morning saying, hey, I can't wait to call Buzz Aldrin a liar, a coward, and a thief. And I'm sure he didn't wake up that morning saying, I can't wait to get even with Bart Sibrel and punch him in the face. It's one of those things that the heat turned up. And you can see this. Go to Sibrel.com. It's one of the clips of the book. The book goes into the backstory of all of this. And a lot of information. I don't know that you read it, but a lot of information that's not in the movie. including the homicide of Apollo astronauts, that their dead relatives, the relatives of the dead people told me they were murdered by the CIA. Not my opinion, theirs. So that's what the book is about. It's interactive. There are multiple video clips. I think there's 17 in the Moon book. And I write a chapter and I say, go to Sibrel.com, watch link 1, link 2, so forth. So at that point in Beverly Hills, I think it was around September, maybe 13th or something, 2002. And the Japanese crew had interviewed him. I was brought on as a surprise guest. And I said, swear on the Bible that you walked on the moon. This was the 4th occasion that I had interaction with Buzz Aldrin, 2 of which were off the record. And he made it clear to me that he does believe in God. And that's why he didn't swear on the Bible, because he didn't want to blaspheme God, that he, in fact, did not walk on the moon. And, the way I look at it, guys, is if I walked on the moon and someone thought otherwise, I would find that hysterically funny. I'm like, really? You really think I didn't walk on the moon? Swear on a Bible? Sure. Would 2 Bibles make you feel better? What about 3? What about 4? Would that make you feel better? But he reacted like I walked up to him in front of his wife and says, oh, your mistress says hello. You see, a sword with no point causes no injury. And the fact that he's angry in front of his entourage is because I'm correct. And so I called him a liar, a coward, and a thief. And of course, I've been a liar, a coward, and a thief. And he got mad and he punched me. Just one of those things. And even though we had assault on camera, the Beverly Hills public, what do you call it? What's the attorney, not the public defender, the other side of it. Anyway, the prosecutor, chief prosecutor for Beverly Hills, said they wouldn't prosecute a national hero. And that shows you how far the U.S. has fallen when their national heroes are a bunch of liars.
Yeah.
And so it's just one of those things that happened. I should have sent the guy a box of cigars for all the free publicity. But the fact is, they did fake the moon landing. I used to think they were real. Even more so, I had like a shrine in my house of Apollo 11 pictures that followed me wherever I went. And then I was open-minded. You never know.
Mm-hmm.
Then I show, and I can bring up the pictures, shadows intersecting at 90 degrees. And this footage we uncovered, of course, I didn't uncover it at the time. I thought, something's not right about this. And I was a filmmaker, and a filmmaker's job is to make fake scenes look real. And I could tell you these pictures that they claim are on the moon are absolutely shot in a TV studio with electrical light. In fact, why don't I just try the Google share button here, see if it works. Here, and your audience and yourselves, you can try this. You just go out at noon on a cloudless day, look at 2 trees, 2 people in a yard or parking lot at lunch, or 2 telephone poles, which is this. And you'll see, because the sun is about 1 million times bigger than the Earth in volume, that it will cast a shadow in the same direction over the entire continent or moon. Shadows from the sun are always parallel. It's mathematically, scientifically impossible for them to intersect, as you see.
Mm-hmm.
And if you saw the full picture of this shadow goes, up the building, and this shadow goes up the building, and they still remain parallel up the building. On the right here is a picture that they claim was from the last mission to the moon, where the Apollo astronaut shadow is at 12 o'clock and a rock about 5 feet away is at 9 o'clock. It's impossible for this picture to have been taken in sunlight. Now, according to NASA, with no atmosphere on the moon, the sunlight is 20 times brighter than a desert at noon. So the last thing in the world they would need would be an electrical light to supplement, the darkness.
Yeah.
So the fact that these shadows are intersecting at 90 degrees from objects 5 feet apart is 100% proof that it was taken with electrical light, which means they're on Earth, which means they didn't go to the moon. You see that? It's super simple to prove. You can just prove that they did not go to the moon with that one picture. That's it. It's over. They faked the picture from the last mission, which means they never went. Their equipment was identical. If one Volkswagen Bug can't go 500 miles an hour, none of them can. They all have the same equipment. So if the last mission couldn't go to the moon, and we have the first mission faking being halfway to the moon, which we can show in a minute, then they never went. And so first we have the shadows intersecting. That means they didn't go to the moon. You can prove that in a court of law. Take the jury out, sunlight, parallel, intersecting shadows, electrical light, they didn't go. It's over there.
Could it be that they did fake the photos, the videos and everything because they couldn't get the footage?
Well, that's what they would like you to believe, because with new AI technology, it has concluded that the moon pictures are fake. And so to put out that fire, they just came out with a movie called Fly Me to the Moon, I think is the name of the movie. And they say, oh, we really went to the moon, but we faked pictures. Well, the fact is, if you really went, the last thing in the world you would do would be fake any of the images, because then people would say you faked the whole thing. So if you really went, there's no reason to fake it. You see, they can claim whatever they want, radiation exposure, whatever. But the fact is, they didn't even have live pictures during the landing. They had like an Atari graphic on CBS News claiming they're landing on the moon, which is interesting because we heard their audio that was supposed to be live. But why not have video live? They're both radio signals. So if you can have live audio, 100 feet up, 50 feet up, 10 feet up, why not put a video camera on the side of the lunar module? In fact, why not have a video camera on the side of the rocket the entire mission to the moon? And you can turn on the TV at any time, seeing the moon getting bigger, bigger, bigger. They didn't have live video during the landing because they really weren't there. So the first proof is shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, and that's all the proof you need to prove it in a court of law. The second proof is this footage. Go to the, Sibrel.com, or I'll share it right now. I have it queued up here. Let's see here. This is from A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. Hold on.
It's a good documentary, by the way.
Yeah, we have actually watched that as well.
And just so you know, I have got your Moonman book. I've got it on Audible. You've got a very good reading voice.
Oh, thank you. Now, you guys, I've got my 3D printer on over here. You said you were gonna send me some fish and chips, right?
Yeah, honestly.
I know. From a culinary point of view, it does taste like plastic, but I got some malt vinegar to cover it up. I think it'll still
plenty
be
of that
good here.
Plenty of that.
If you ever come to the UK, I'll buy you fish and chips.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to jump over here. This is my own video. This is one of the clips of the moon book. It's not actually from A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon. This is basically the Apollo 11 crew claiming that they're halfway to the moon, and this is supposed to be the lens at the window looking back at the little Earth floating in space. We have the unedited version that says, do not show to the public at the beginning of the reel. A whistleblower at NASA sent it to us. This is a work light inside of the spacecraft. And what we're seeing is part of the Earth outside of a circular window with the camera at the back with the lights turned off. And here they are taking away the fake Terminator line in front of the window, proving that they are faking being halfway to the moon. Everybody who sees this agrees that this is them faking being halfway to the moon. And the lights come up and you see it's really the window. They lied. The lens is not at the glass to shoot the Earth far away like they claimed. That's really the window of the spacecraft. And they've done a very clever illusion of the Earth floating in space, pretending that they're halfway to the moon when in fact they're still in Earth orbit. And when I saw this, I'm like, oh my gosh, they really did fake the moon landing. And here we're going to see a side-by-side presentation of it. On the left is them claiming this is, Neil Armstrong calling in from 130,000 miles out. Actually, that's on the right, sorry. And that's the footage that they show in all the NASA documentaries. And then on the left is the special unedited reel that I got that says don't show to the public. So on the right, Neil Armstrong just says Roger Houston, Apollo 11, calling in from 130,000 miles out. He says that the lens is at the glass to shoot the Earth far away to prove that they've left Earth orbit. Well, they never left Earth orbit. Here we are 55 years later, and they still cannot leave Earth orbit. And here they are breaking down the shot. They thought that this would never be showed to the public. That's Michael Collins, his arms in front of there. They even put a little crescent piece in front of the window to fake the Terminator line between night and day. Here's an outtake that they never showed of an astronaut's arm getting in front of the window. You see, so that's a 1-foot model of the Earth, and they're pretending to be halfway to the moon, which means they cannot go halfway to the moon, right? Because they're faking being halfway to the moon. So there you have it. That's the second proof. Am I back to you guys? I don't know where I am here.
We watched.
Go back up here.
Yeah, you're back to us now. We watched your documentary the other day, and I were ready for this one, but then after I'd never seen your documentary before, and I were going to question on this, but then me and Jay thought the Earth doesn't look big enough.
It would be massive.
I personally think even if you're halfway to the moon, it surely would be.
Yeah, like we stand on Earth and we look at the moon, and it's quite big. You can see it's quite big. If you stood on the moon or even halfway to the moon, the Earth would be gigantic, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, you're right. They got the proportion wrong. Here's another interesting little tidbit along that line of thinking. If you and I went through the tunnel, to France, and we go to Paris, of course, how many pictures of us are there going to be with the Eiffel Tower in the background?
Lots.
A lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So according to astronomers, the Earth is always over the horizon of the moon, and it's, huge.
Yeah.
There's not a single picture of an Apollo astronaut posing with the Earth large over the horizon.
Because you could do that like you were holding it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Because they couldn't fake the rotating of the Earth and the proper cloud patterns that were supposed to be present at the time. They couldn't fake it.
Yeah.
So they just acted like it never happened. So the first proof we have is shadows intersecting at 90 degrees, which can't happen in sunlight, which means it's electrical light, which means they didn't go. It's over. The second proof we just showed. They are faking being halfway to the moon. Now, the latest, development is in November. They had this big convention, and they have conventions every year for video equipment that I've been to in Las Vegas, conventions for cars, for shoes, and they had an AI convention, happened to be in Moscow. Putin showed up, and they let people for 3 or 4 days play with the latest and greatest, smartest, most advanced AI, which is multiple AIs hooked up together. It's called Google's neural network. One team had it write a symphony, which took about 1.5 seconds. One team had it write a novel based on these plot points, took about 1.5 seconds. And then the AI has this deep fake detection program, which has never been wrong. You can feed it a video of Biden or Trump. It'll tell you in 1 second whether it's really them or a deep fake. So one team, out of morbid curiosity, fed it pictures from an unmanned probe that wouldn't die from radiation, which is another clip we're going to show. And they are of the lunar surface from China from 2014. It said they're real. And then in comparison, it fed them Apollo pictures from the Nixon administration. It says they're all fake. Fake background, fake foreground, fake this. So the world's smartest AI just said that the moon missions are fake.
Почти все объекты на этом фото ей кажутся ненастоящими. В то же время вот фотография китайского лунохода у нее особенных вопросов не вызывает.
А это то, что кажется не настоящим?
Да, вот то, что красное.
Это сетка гугловская, не наша. Так, чтобы не было предвзятости никакой. Удивительно, но там точно вот она смотрит по очень много параметров, в том числе там падение светотеней и так далее, и показывает, что это инкорпорировано в фотографию.
You see that?
Yeah.
They're trying to suppress their own story. So this film comes out to put out that fire. Oh, okay, maybe we really went, but we faked the pictures because there's radiation exposure or whatever. No. If you really went, you would never fake anything, because there were people at the time saying it was fake, preaching it from church pulpits saying it was fake. You would never risk a real mission being associated with faking of it by faking of it. And they didn't care whether they had footage. They had no footage during the landing, no footage during the takeoff. They had a black and white picture, and that was it. And these still camera pictures came out weeks later in the National Geographic. So first proof, shadows intersecting. Second proof, we have them on camera faking being halfway to the moon. That's what convinced me. I gave them the benefit of the doubt as long as possible, but when I see them in front of my eyes faking being halfway to the moon, there's nothing more you can say. And as you watch the film, at the beginning of it, there's a third hidden track of the CIA telling them to fake a 4-second radio delay. Hey, the TV picture looks great. 1, 2, 3, 4, talk. And then they start speaking.
Yeah.
You're faking a 4-second radio delay. And we have that audio, which is on the homepage of Sibrel.com. And then the third proof, today, with 55 years better technology, the farthest that NASA can send an astronaut into space is 1,000th the distance to the moon. So what they're really claiming is, in 1969, when all of NASA had 1/1,000,000th the computing power of a cell phone, they sent an astronaut ahead of schedule on the first attempt 1,000 times farther than they can do today with 50 years better technology. So they're claiming, for the first time in the entire history of the world, there was greater technology in the past and in the future. That's a historic and scientific impossibility, which means they didn't go.
Yeah.
And then we have
We didn't
confession.
go, but thanks for coming. See you later.
Not really. I mean, you know, and so you can't have greater technology in the past and the future. That proves it. You can't have shadows intersecting. That proves it.
Yeah.
You wouldn't fake being halfway to the moon if you could really go halfway to the moon, which means you can't leave Earth orbit, and they can't leave Earth orbit today. That's why there's mannequins orbiting the moon. And if that wasn't enough, we have the Deathbed Confession, and let me go ahead and share the screen one more time. This is Cyrus Eugene Akers. He was chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968. Now, every branch of the military has their special ops intelligence division. The Navy has it, the Army has it, and the Air Force has it. And it's located at the place where this guy was chief of security. Special Operations, United States Air Force Base, located in Clovis, New Mexico. And as this man was dying, fearing God, and as best as we know, the Bible says if you confess your sins, you're forgiven. He said, I'm a murderer. I killed somebody. I killed a coworker at Cannon Air Force Base in 1968. His son wanted to help the dead man's family have closure, brought in the military police to investigate it. They came in, they investigated it. The son told me that they got the name of the person he killed, and then they asked him why. Why did you kill him? He said, well, he was going to squeal about a military secret. What secret is that? We eyewitnessed them filming the first moon landing a year in advance, June 1st, 2nd, and 3rd of 1968 at Cannon Air Force Base. My friend thought it was morally wrong. I killed him to keep it a secret. He even says President Johnson showed up the first day of filming and gave him a list of 15 people, VIP visitors, who were allowed in to observe. I publish that list in the book, Moonman, at Sibrel.com. So there you have it. We have the proof that they didn't go to the moon through them faking being halfway to the moon, through intersecting shadows, through the fact that you can't have greater technology in the past and in the future, and the fact that you can't have an eyewitness, make something up as he's dying, right? And the court sees a deathbed confession as twice, 3 times as powerful as a regular confession. They've got nothing to lose. They've got no bribery. Why do they care?
How was that verified?
Well, we confirmed that he was the chief of security at Cannon Air Force Base through military records and his pictures, photographs. And oddly enough, as I'm putting this information in my book, Moonman, the son who survived his father, his house was broken into and everything about his father was confiscated. And then a few days later, 2 government employees show up and threaten to kill him and his family if they talk to me ever again about his father's participation in the moon landing fraud.
Right.
The White House press secretary was involved in getting this man whistleblower protection. The FBI was involved. And the United States Senate Select Committee on Intelligence was involved on getting this guy whistleblower protection about 2 years ago.
Right.
So this is an embarrassing fact for the United States government. I call it the linchpin, the finger out of the dike. They say that JFK assassination, the witnesses, some say they knocked off 200 people to keep that a secret.
Wow.
The guy's nephew, Robert Kennedy Jr., who has more access to the JFK files, right, than Oliver Stone does, says that it's his researched opinion that the CIA killed his uncle.
Yeah.
He's the expert, not me. I would think he's correct.
Yeah.
When a former vice president of a pharmaceutical company says there is no illness, they're manufacturing it, and the medicine is not good for you. I don't know. I'm not a virologist. He is. I take his opinion. And Robert McNamara, who was defense secretary during the Vietnam War that the public was against, he and the CIA got together and said, we need like a Pearl Harbor incident to get people motivated. Because on December 6th, 1941, 90% of Americans were against entering World War II. On December 7th, 90% were for it. So they imagined an attack by the North Vietnamese on a ship in the Gulf of Tonkin. He said before he died, they just made that up. Congress passed a law, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution, that led to the death of 3 million people, including 58,220 Americans. So I think if they're willing to kill their own president, if they're willing to kill 58,220 of their own citizens, I don't think they're going to have a problem faking an image, a video on the moon. Now, are they? And so we have an eyewitness, we have shadows intersecting, we have the greater technology in the past and in the future. And if it weren't for people's emotional attachment, you see, whoever killed JFK, he's still dead. Whoever did 9/11, they're still dead. It's negative regardless. You're just changing the hat on who did it and why. This is different. This is a positive lie. This is candy. People wanted to believe. Nixon said the number one threat to America at the time was not China or Russia. It was Americans protesting the federal government over the Vietnam War. This is a pep rally.
So we're halfway through the interview.
We are.
That's Bart Sibrel. I'm sure you're enjoying it. If you are enjoying it, again, please like. In fact, subscribe first. Everyone says like and subscribe. No, subscribe first.
And then like.
Then like it. Maybe put the bell on. We don't care about that. But if you did, it'd be mint. And leave a comment of what you think about Bart Sibrel so far. And anyway, we back on, Bang? Are we back on? It's 2:30 in the morning again.
Paul's deliriously tired.
I'm deliriously tired. I left my family holiday to come and interview Bart Sibrel, and then I'm off back to my holiday tomorrow. So enjoy the rest of the interview.
Let's get back to it.
And we'll see you on the next episode.
See you in a bit.
President Johnson is the one who came up with the code name for the fake moon landing. He called it Project Slam Dunk. Because if you fake it, you can have a 100% guarantee it'll succeed. It's a slam dunk, right? And this is why he didn't run for re-election when he was eligible. It's only happened 3 times in America, because he knew the faking of the moon landing would be in the next term. And who knew you would get away with that? What if you got caught? Didn't want to have anything to do with that.
Very clever.
He backed out. Good luck. And this is proof that the two-party system is irrelevant, because we had Democratic Johnson there supervising the faking of it and Nixon giving it the thumbs up. So thinking that one party is better than the other, what a lie that is, to keep us divided, not going after the genuine enemy, which is in the District of Columbia.
Right.
What do you think? What do you think to America's motive for that? What do you think that is? Because obviously I've got it here that I watched your documentary and they reckon US, well, Russia had like Sputnik, the first animal, the first man, the first spacewalk, the first crew of 3, and then obviously the 2 simultaneously orbiting spacecraft. Well, USA had nothing.
That's my free ad.
Right. Okay.
They give me $200,000 for showing this.
No, it just mentioned that like the US were scared of like a potential nuclear threat from orbit, and obviously Russia had accomplished so much more.
That would be making excuses for the pedophile. The fact is, the reason why they faked it is the same reason why President Clinton had an affair, which he denied 20 times until there was irrefutable proof, right? Denied it 20 times. Never did it, never did it, never did it. 20 times. Okay, you caught me, I did it. And then some reporter asked him why. And he said, because I could. Because I could get away with it. Why did they fake the moon landing? Because they could. Only arrogance of evil gangsters. Gangsters run America.
Oh,
That's who runs it.
They run the world.
Look at the face, the picture of, I think, John Brennan. Is that his name? Former CIA director. If that's not a gangster face, I don't know what is. Kill you if you get in their way. Imagine if they faked the moon landing and never killed anybody. Forgive the devious part of me. I might respect their cleverness a little bit. You know, it's pretty clever. The guys who tunnel, from the dry cleaner into the bank get the gold. Good for you. But not if they slit the throat of 3 guards with wives and children. You see, and according to the dead man's relatives, you see, this is not in A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, but in the book Moonman, which you read or heard on audio.
I am just started reading it. Or listening to you.
The crew that was gonna be the first crew to walk on the moon was murdered by the CIA. Not my opinion, the opinion of the dead man's widow, who I interviewed for 4 hours, and opinion of the dead man's son, who's a 747 pilot, who I interviewed for 3 hours. They said he came home from work on January 26, 1967, and said, "Hon, for some strange reason, the CIA is all over the launch pad today." This is the man who was going to be the first man to walk on the moon, who held a press conference without permission, taking reporters to the top of the rocket, putting a lemon on it, calling it a piece of junk. We're never going to the moon with this rocket. Days later, he's dead for not cooperating, according to his wife. And he said the CIA suddenly flashing their badges all over the launch pad, inspecting the equipment. The next day he's dead from faulty equipment.
Is this with the oily rags as well?
And the
That's right. I have to admit, I admire, even though it's corrupt too, of course, the British Parliament, that the leader, your prime minister, has to debate on an ongoing basis. In America, they have to speak for 1 minute once a year and never show up any other time when you've done your legal minimum. And, it's like, rah, 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 this and that and the other. It's a little bit better. And, of course, this country was founded because King George, they viewed as a tyrant because he wants to tax our tea. Damn him for wanting to tax it. And it was probably like, 2% or something.
We do love tea.
And so they said, that's it. And then they had the Gulf, what do you call it? I'm sorry, the Boston Massacre, where I think 5 people were killed, and it was probably both parties' fault, to be honest. And yet, after 5 people were killed, they said, that's it. That's enough. That's it. We're willing to die for what is right. And now we have this founding document, the Declaration of Independence, which says, Thomas Jefferson wrote it, when any nation becomes destructive of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, it is the right of the people to alter it or abolish it. The federal government, sorry, I guess I'll probably die tomorrow around 4 o'clock, should be abolished. You can't reform a snake. You can't reform a snake. It's unreformable. You need to kill it. And I think we'd be better off with the independent states of America and legislatures, deciding whatever, governors deciding whatever. And so, according to Betty and Scott Grissom, the federal government killed their husband and father because he wouldn't cooperate with the moon landing fraud. That's destructive of life, isn't it? And then our taxes, right? If you include sales tax and gasoline tax, it's like 55%. God only asked for 10. Those funds were paying for the salaries of the CIA agents, which killed our brethren who were exposing the crimes of the federal government. So they're destructive of life, aren't they? And of liberty. During this little thing for the last 3 years, I don't care if 9 out of 10 people are dropping dead. It's your right to go shopping under those circumstances. It's your right to open your business under those circumstances. If we have one group of people telling another group of people they can't open their business, they can't go to church, and now you can go to church, but you can't sing, you can't have your wedding, and now you can have your wedding, but you can't have dancing, then one group are the masters and the other groups are the slaves. It's a government of the people, by the people, for the people. Well, it's supposed to be. And so you have one group of people telling them if you have 5 people at your son's birthday party, we'll shut off your electricity and drag you to jail. So that's a destructive of life, murdering their own people, destructive of liberty. You see, you can advise us if you want, be careful. There might be an illness going around, but you can't tell people what they can and can't do. I mean, isn't that what freedom is?
Well, yeah.
And apparently, it's become so much more tyrannical. We would have, I don't know, so much more freedom if we went back to King George managing the colonies.
Well, you say that.
You could do practically anything you wanted to do. I think prostitution was legal, cocaine was legal. Not that those things are good.
No.
God gives us free will, so we have to give each other free will. And so people want to sell their bodies, that's their right. If people want to take a plant and boil it and snort it, that's their right.
Completely agree with you.
And I don't advise it, but what better way than to give it a try and realize it's probably not the good thing.
Is that your aim? Is your aim to bring down the tyranny? Like, what is your purpose for doing all this? Because obviously you've got a passion for it, and you've written a new book as well, which I will listen to in the future. What is your aim?
Well, Paul, I would say that originally, when Bill Casey, a guy who worked at NASA for 6 years, who said it was fake, came to me and said, Bart, you're a filmmaker, make a film exposing this. I said, well, let me think about it. And then when shadows intersecting and 2 of the 3 guys won't give an interview and the administrator resigns and the Soviet Union is 5 times more advanced, I'm like, something doesn't smell right about this. I have this relentless personality. Kick off the horse 100 times, I'll get on 101. Yeah. And if I have to turn over 1,000 rocks to find one clue, I will do it. Clue is priceless. So knowing that about myself and having this kind of spiritual smell that something's not right about the moon landings, I thought, if they didn't go, and I start digging into this, that could be dangerous. Why
Yeah.
should I risk my life for what Nixon did? No, thank you. I turn it down. Then years go by, I start reading the Bible. I got a 1-year Bible. Started June 3rd, 1989, the day the man stood in front of the tanks in China. And over the next 5 years, I read the Bible 5 times from cover to cover. Wasn't a Christian by any means. However, it did develop in me an understanding there is good versus evil.
Yeah.
I mean, come on, people, wake up. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously murder's wrong, stealing's wrong, rape is wrong, surely, right? And there's some spiritual quality here, and it makes sense that there's a judgment for how we live our lives. And then I realized I didn't know that they faked it. I thought maybe they faked the moon landing. I said, if they faked it. That is so much more profound historically than if they had actually gone. Do you understand that?
Yeah.
Either they planted a flag, came back, that was a close one, almost got killed. Or the most powerful nation on earth told a lie about the greatest accomplishment on earth, murdered people to cover it up, printed it on stamps, on coins in the encyclopedia, had ticker tape parades, and gave them medals of honor for being such good liars.
Yeah.
If that's true, that is so much more profound than if they'd actually gone. It's like there's this cancer that people don't know about. And that's why it's the finger out of the dike. Sure, more people died covering up JFK. More people died in 9/11, but it's different. This is a positive lie. You expose this, I believe the federal government will come down. This is sweet candy, and you're giving them manure. People will be outraged that they have been used. And Elon Musk needs to know, he's playing ball with NASA so he can fulfill his dreams while he's promoting free speech on X, which is the right thing to do. But he knows about the moon landing fraud, and he's remaining silent. Part of free speech is not censoring. And the other half is speaking up when you know better. Wasn't it, I think, Benjamin Franklin who said that tyranny will go on forever when good men remain silent?
Yeah.
And if the moon landing fraud is the finger out of the dike to bring down the corrupt system, we have to expose the moon landing fraud. How can he be anti-corruption and not expose the one thing that will bring down the federal government? Right?
Yeah, he's obviously looking after his own.
Yeah, because I mentioned to you earlier that there were certain things that have made me change my viewpoint, and I'm sure you have seen it. Have you seen the mouse on the SpaceX rocket booster?
Well, I've seen the video that.
Do you think that's a mouse?
No, I don't think it's a mouse, but that still doesn't mean they didn't fake the moon landing fraud.
Well, I saw that, and I think it looks a lot like a mouse.
Oh, it does look like a lot like a mouse, but I don't think it is.
Right.
But irregardless, they did fake the moon landing.
Well,
the shadows intersect. They're faking being halfway to the moon. We have an eyewitness who confessed to murdering somebody to cover it up. And you can't have greater technology in the past and in the future, because when they blew up the first atomic bomb in 1945, right, just 10 years later, 10 years, atomic bombs were 1,000 times more powerful.
Yeah.
So if they could go to the moon and play golf and drive cars, we would be on Mars 10 years later. We'd be in another solar system by now. There'd be bases all over the moon.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Why is it they can drive cars and play golf and loop around, but today we can only have mannequins orbit the moon?
And also, in any human endeavor as well, it doesn't work first time. And this is the one that got me. Like the Wright brothers obviously failed loads. Obviously, Titanic didn't last first time. These great feats of engineering, but for that reason, it just took off first time, didn't it?
Yeah, it's never happened in the history of aviation. No aviation equipment has ever worked on the first attempt, except the most complicated one of all time. And NASA has never kept a schedule, never. to put a telescope into Earth orbit 10 years behind schedule. To have mannequins orbit the moon, they were 4 years behind schedule, and they actually said they were going to have people doing it, and they changed it to mannequins. But the only time NASA has ever kept a schedule was the most complicated mission of all time.
And didn't they destroy all the technology?
What an amazing feat.
So we can't do it again. All the technology has been destroyed.
One of the clips at Sibrel.com is NASA's astronauts saying they destroyed the technology. Now, if there was any technology in the entire history of the world you might consider destroying, it would be the atomic bomb. Okay, let's use it to end World War II. Now let's throw it all in a furnace. 10 years later, it's 1,000 times more powerful. They would never destroy that. They cherish it. So you spent, in today's dollars, 200 and I forget what it is now, it's some extraordinary amount, $270 billion to go to the moon. And then you throw the equipment, the schematics, the blueprints in the furnace, you burn it up. One of the clips is Don Pettit at Sibrel.com saying we destroyed the technology. Now, if you really went to the moon and spent $270 billion, the last thing you would do would be to destroy it. But if you perpetrated a fraud, where someone could find out that the rocket didn't have enough fuel to leave Earth orbit, the batteries couldn't protect the astronauts against the heat or the radiation, then you would destroy it. So the fact that they destroyed everything is actually proof of the fraud, because if they really went, they would never do that.
Go on. Sorry.
No, you go.
I was say regarding the the Van Allen belts as well. So from 1,000 to 26,000, you'd never be able to get. We never really get through it, I think, and it shows as well that there's, what were it? Mercury, Gemini, Soyuz, Skylab, and Space Shuttle have only ever done up to 1,000 miles. They've never gone beyond that.
Yeah, here's a graphic of it. If I can, let's see, show this here. Here we are, the Van Allen radiation belt.
Yeah.
Every manned mission has been below this radiation that most people don't know exists. Every manned mission below the radiation is 30,000 miles thick, except going to the moon. Now, in one of these clips here, I have the NASA saying that the technology has not been invented yet.
My name is Kelly Smith, and I work on navigation and guidance for Orion. We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this could harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
It's too bad. So basically, here's the quote here. You can see it on the screen. He's talking about going through the radiation. They sent an unmanned probe through it. And regarding sending humans through the radiation belt, he says the following quote, word for word. We must solve these challenges going through the radiation before we send people through this region of space. Okay. We must solve these challenges before we send people through the Van Allen radiation belt, which means the technology for an astronaut to go through it and survive has not been invented yet. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space, the radiation belt, which means it hasn't been invented yet, the technology to do that. So I would say that's pretty condemning, right? We have NASA's own engineer saying that the technology to go through the radiation and survive hasn't been invented yet. So how did they go through it to the moon? So I contact NASA and I say, you know, you sent an unmanned probe into the radiation with 2 Geiger counters. Can I have those readings? They said it's a military secret.
Right.
I'm like, what? I'm like, I don't understand this. When you send probes to the sun to find out the temperature of the sun is not a military secret. And when you sent probes to Jupiter to find out how much helium is in Jupiter's atmosphere, the amount of helium in Jupiter's atmosphere is not a military secret. So why would the amount of radiation and the radiation belts that the astronauts would have to go through to the moon, why is that amount of radiation a military secret? Because it would prove they didn't go to the moon. He just said so out of his own mouth. The technology to go through this has not been invented yet. So, I mean, I don't know what more proof you need. It's just this emotional attachment that people have to the grandiose. And if you go to Sibrel.com, watch A Funny Thing Happened on the Way to the Moon, we open up with the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
To reach the heavens, never finished. The Titanic, the ship that God himself could not sink, never made one voyage. And Richard Nixon, about men on the moon, said it's the greatest event since God made the universe. Also never happened. How ironic. You see, the modern day Tower of Babel, there's a spiritual lesson here that mankind faked the moon mission by the most powerful nation on earth that claims to be the most righteous. How about that?
Can I found two, obviously, because we knew we were going to have you on, and we can't just let you have a totally easy ride. There's two things that people have said online and stuff, and I just wondered if you could counter those. One of them is the Russian Space Agency actually tracked the mission, as well as other radio people around the world. They all tracked it all the way to the moon, so they claim, and that's Russia. And I find that quite weird. Why would they say they tracked or were they tracking something else?
Well, people have vague memories. People claim that they looked through a telescope and saw the lander. You know, according to NASA, there's no Earth-based telescope that's powerful enough to resolve to the surface of the moon. The fact is, the former Russia space director, the NASA equivalent, just said in retirement that the moon missions are fake. Right. He said so. We just had the most advanced AI in the world say the moon missions are fake. And Fox News calls me up the next day after the Russian former space director says the moon missions are fakes, you know, to throw together a special about the moon landings, whether they're real or not. And they tell me, we haven't read your book, we haven't seen your movies, and irregardless, we will conclude that the moon missions are real to reassure people. And in their hour-long special, they quote a Russian scientist from 1969 who was deceived, who said, congratulations. They didn't quote 6 weeks earlier the former director of the space agency in Russia who said they were fake. And this is Fox News, who is supposedly anti-deep state, right?
Yeah.
You see, they're not, are they? And RT, supposedly anti-deep state, never covered the story, not a single time, that Vladimir Putin was there in front of the screen of the AI and shown that the moon missions were fake. Never made a story on RT. You would think that would be a great story, right? The fact is, the Russians and the Chinese and the Japanese and the Indians and the Israelis know the moon missions are fake, and they're cooperating with the United States. Just ask Saddam Hussein, Noriega, right? What happens when you don't cooperate with the United States of America?
Yeah.
I have a friend who works at the space agency in China, who says everybody knows the moon missions are fake. China, he told me, is blackmailing NASA to get space technology in exchange for not exposing the moon landing fraud.
Well, that's just answered my next question as well. My next question was going to be, China have got a telescope going round the moon, and it is claimed that they've taken pictures of the Apollo landing site. And this is
no, China hasn't made that claim. Right. India has made that claim. And if you zoom in on them, they're three-legged landers, which would be logical to land on an uneven surface. But Apollo landers had four legs, so I think they put something there after the fact to cover it up. No, China's policy is they've never publicly said that the moon missions are real. That's according to their own cultural honesty. They've never once said the moon missions are real. But they've agreed not to expose them either in exchange for technology. So the United States is breaking its own Espionage Act by giving technology that Congress forbid the United States to give to China. They're doing it anyway. What a surprise. The CIA is breaking the law.
Yeah.
I've looked a lot into the CIA before I even knew about you, and they are one dodgy organization, aren't they?
Well, I think it's
You know how many CIA agents it takes to screw in a light bulb?
I don't know.
Well, I can tell you. Then I have to kill you.
yeah.
Well,
They need disbanding, don't they?
they do.
They're not doing what they initially set
Well,
out to
Kennedy
do.
tried to do that.
Well, yeah, we know what happened there.
Unsuccessful, right?
Is that your ultimate goal then, just to bring down the tyranny of the government?
No, the goal is to show mankind how far they have fallen. I have no animosity to any of the Apollo astronauts or to the Kennedy assassin, actually. The Bible says, Jesus says, before I read the Bible, I thought, well, the Old Testament is strict and the New Testament is lenient. And then I read it and the opposite is true. The Old Testament is full of, parting the Red Sea, and the next day they worship a golden calf.
Mm-hmm.
And then God forgives, God forgives, God forgives. And then Jesus comes along and says, you have heard that it was said, do not murder. I tell you, the standard is higher. Do not hate. Because if you hate and you were king of the world, off with their head. So it's the same thing. You have heard, do not commit adultery. The standard is higher. Do not lust. Because if you lust, you're willing to do it. And so I have no animosity to people because I've hated somebody to the degree that if I were king of the world, off with their head. So I'm a murderer in my heart and a liar and a thief and all those things I accuse the astronauts of. I just try to repent. That's all we have to do to receive God's grace. We are not saved by our repentance. It's like a safety deposit box with two keys, one from the bank, God, and one from you. I can repent, turn my key, all I want, and it's not good enough to enter heaven unless there's God's grace. You see, but it says in John 3:16, God's grace, that key is turned for the whole world. But very few people, wide and narrow, will take advantage of it by qualifying for that grace by repenting. It's like a grant. I get $1 million grant to produce a film I hope to produce someday. Is the $1 million a gift? Of course it's a gift, and I qualify for it. Not everyone can get that gift. It says, this is love for God, to obey the commandments. Jesus says, why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? It says in James 2, even the demons believe in God. See, believing that Jesus is the Messiah isn't salvation. Proof that you believe is obedience. Then your sins are forgiven when you qualify for that grant. You see. Right. So all the astronauts, the JFK assassination, and whoever else, I think should be given amnesty in exchange for a confession. That's what I would promote. I don't hate the astronauts. I don't hate the people running the world. They're harassed sheep without a shepherd. If you look at, people pick on Bill Gates, right? For doing all the odd things that he does. Mm. And yet, if you look at him, the way he speaks, if I may do an impression here in my frame here, he talks kind of like this. That's a mental illness. It is. Yeah. And then his parents, founded Planned Parenthood and were racist, planting Planned Parenthood in neighborhoods of the race they didn't like, you see. So he has the psychological conditioning of racism, and then he has some sort of mental illness physically in his brain. Not that he doesn't, choose free will. I don't know. But the guy's lost. I was lost. And maybe backslide into lost and get saved again. I don't know. We're all in this struggle together. I think the moon landing fraud, the purpose is really to show mankind how far they have fallen. My personal opinion is separate, that we would be better off without the federal government. Just pull the plug on it, call it the independent states of America. We have proof by killing Kennedy, faking the moon landing, Gulf of Tonkin, 9/11, this little thing for the last 3 years. Top down doesn't work. Bottom up should work.
What's your thoughts?
And so let's have that kind of government. But the main issue, the main purpose is to have mankind have an epiphany, to wake up. The moon landing fraud coming out would be like a cold glass of water in the face. And I wake up and I realize I was dreaming, I was sleepwalking, and I look down and I'm 1 foot away from a cliff.
Right.
That's what the release of the moon landing fraud would do. People who claim to be anti-deep state need to prove it. Right? Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and not do what I say? Prove it. Tell the truth about the moon landing fraud. Even Elon Musk. What have you got to lose? Right? If we back down to bullies, they gain their strength. It's when we stand up to the cockroaches, they run for the shadows. You see.
What's your thoughts on the Trump assassination? And do you think that was another deep state CIA attack?
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And
no, we do too.
That's more obvious than the moon landings.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Trump isn't a saint most of the time, if not virtually all of the time. Virtually all of the time. These accusations of sexual impropriety or financial impropriety or political impropriety that, you know, the media releases from a CIA source is true. Everybody's sinned, everybody's make mistakes, everybody's a work in progress, including Trump and Biden. But I've never seen the CIA, the media, hate anybody like they hate Trump. It's kind of odd. He says there were 1 million people at my rally. The press says, no, only 999,998.
Yeah.
So the fact that it hit his ear and didn't kill him, forgive me, I find kind of amusing. I mean, from a spiritual point of view, it's pretty amusing. You know, he didn't get killed.
Somebody's looking after him.
I don't look at if. I hate if. What if? What if? Give me a break. He didn't get killed. And therefore, you know, hitting his ear, and not just find that kind of amusing. I don't think he's a saint. I don't think he's, without sin. And I suspect all those accusations of impropriety in the past are true. The CIA doesn't have to make stuff up. They record everything. Mm-hmm. They record everything. And if you want to run for president 30 years from now, they'll bring up the time you did cocaine or had sex with a prostitute 30 years ago from a camera at the gas station. You know, they have all that. So all that stuff is probably true about Trump. However, if the CIA hates them, then that's a vote for, I don't vote anymore. I think that's pointless. But who knows? Pharaoh was God's chosen instrument, and Pharaoh was not a righteous individual. And Trump or Biden or Obama or Kamala could be God's chosen instrument. Maybe Kamala Harris, if she became president, would be her own person and would, say, look, I'm the first female president. I'm not going to follow the deep state. I'm going to do it right for my gender, for my race. Maybe that would happen. I don't know. I don't get involved in politics. I don't vote. I removed myself from the voter registry. I think taking a nap for an hour is a better use of your time. But, this whole Republican Democrat thing is a joke. Just ask Ron Paul or Bernie Sanders if voting matters.
Yeah.
They were both winning and still lost. So,
yep.
It's completely controlled.
Yeah.
What did you think regarding, just going back to the astronauts then, of that famous interview? Right when they got back, and they look like they're under duress, don't they? They look like they've got a gun to their head. They don't seem happy or like they've achieved something great. I don't know, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I showed their, initial press conference, I think, for maybe 10 seconds during a funny thing happened on the way to the moon.
That's all I've seen, yeah. I'll admit that's all I saw.
To me, the convincing epiphany is that window shot of them faking being halfway to the moon. The lights come up. It's a 1 foot model using the window.
Yep, that's the one that got me. That got me.
Yeah, I mean, they're faking being halfway to the moon.
Yeah.
Which means they can't go halfway to the moon, which means they didn't go. And today, they still can't leave Earth orbit. That's why there's mannequins. So they didn't go. And that's just the way that it is. Isn't it ironic? The poster child of conspiracy theories, they faked the moon landing, is true. I mean, who would have thought, right? And so, I mean, you have, what else are they lying about? You know, I don't. What was your question? I forgot.
It was just regarding the interview at the end, in front of the press, and
Right.
they just don't seem very happy.
So most people are like me. Once they see that faking of being halfway to the moon, that's it. It's over. But 1/5, 20% of people who watch the movie say it's their facial expressions during their one and only press conference where they look like they're at the funeral of their mother for an hour.
Yeah.
And that is telling. I mean, if you have eyes to see, something's not right. They should be like the winning locker room of the Super Bowl. We did it. I can't believe we did it and didn't die. Oh, hooray, hooray, hooray. But they're like lying through their teeth and they don't like it. And that's what they look like for a full hour. And many people find that the most convincing thing. You know, it is what it is. You have to have eyes that see. Once I saw them faking being halfway to the moon, then everything fell into place. So that's why the shadows intersect. And that's why they act like they're at the funeral during the press conference. And that's why this, and that's why that. And, you know, the idea that China or Russia would expose it is obviously not true. They would blackmail us, would be much more valuable than just blurting it out, making it valueless. And the idea that all these hundreds of thousands of people were involved is not a proof at all, because Wells Fargo has 500,000 tellers. You think they know about the corruption in the bank that the CEO knows?
Nope.
Completely different. The atomic bomb involved 129,500 people, and only 8 people knew what they were building. You see that? Eugene Krantz, who I've spoken to, says a person at the console in the command center can tell no difference whatsoever between a simulation and a, quote, real flight. Just a bunch of data going by on a screen. If they can't tell the difference, how could we tell the difference?
It was exactly the same point that you got me in the film. That's why it's just that exact bit, the halfway to the moon bit. And I'd listened to your Joe Rogan podcast, and obviously Joe confronted you a lot more, and I were thinking that I would not confront you like Joe does, but talk to you about a few things, but that just ruined it for my whole entire life.
Yeah, as soon as you saw that.
Yeah. I'm not even American. I don't know why I have this thing about going to the moon.
Okay, so let me clarify this, right? We have Jamie, who said in the email he thought they were real, the moon missions, until he watched the Rogan interview, the information I presented. Now he thinks it's ludicrous to say that it was real. And the email, at the time I got it from Jamie, he said you were 30% doubting, and since then you've watched the movie and now you know, like I do, they're fake. So both of you were converted in the very recent past, right?
Yeah.
That's a great proof itself. If someone says, hey, look, I used to work for this pharmaceutical company and thought they were great, but now I know they're evil, and doing scams, I think that's a great testimony. I used to think they were real, and both of you used to think they were real, and now we look at it and say, they did fake it. What can you do?
It's the motive, isn't it?
United States gangster federal government faked the moon landing. They did. And if it weren't for the fact that it's a sweet lie, people would accept it. At the end of each chapter of my book, which, like you pointed out, is an audio, Kindle, or print at Sibrel.com, I have a quote. One quote is from Men in Black 3 that, oddly enough, had the Apollo launch part of the plot, right? And he says, the little prophet, you could say, of the film, the bitterest truth is better than the sweetest lie. We have to love the truth. And that's my mission, to have mankind have an epiphany, not to hurt anybody, not to prosecute anybody, to go, oh.
To be fair, Bart, as well, I don't even think it'd be that shocking.
No.
I think if it came out that America fakes it, we'd all go, okay.
It was.
We know what they're like.
It was something Rogan said, and he said at that, and this is what immediately made me go, hang on a minute, is when he said, at that time, they faked everything.
Right around that time, yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, they did. And then I saw your film, and They didn't go.
No,
They didn't. They did
I
not
know.
go.
And the interesting thing is it's so easy to fake. There's only 3 eyewitnesses, no independent press coverage, and we just have to assume they're telling the truth, right? The people who killed Kennedy, the people who faked the Gulf of Tonkin, right? The people who killed Robert Kennedy Jr. or Robert Kennedy, right? According to his own son. And so there you go. If they're willing to murder all those people, I don't think they have a problem faking a video image, do they?
No.
We have an eyewitness who saw them fake it at Cannon Air Force Base. He says he killed somebody to cover it up. I don't think you make that stuff up. In fact, if you want to conclude, if you're editing this, I'll send you an email when we're done with that link and the time code suggestion. Just put that clip at the end.
I will.
Oh, absolutely.
Of the son of the man who saw them faking it, who murdered a coworker to cover it up.
If you email me that, I will put that in.
Yeah. And, there you go.
Yeah.
What more proof do you need? I remember people calling me up, big podcasters, calling me up. Is this real? Is this real? Yeah, it's real. I've been in touch with this guy for 2 years. They did fake it. We know where. We have a list of 15 people who were there at the time. And it's all recorded, and they faked it. What can you do? Right?
I'll say if you do want to send any evidence, like any documents or all like that, we can put it up as well. It's incredible.
Okay.
Yeah.
It is, and genuinely,
All right.
thank you for coming on.
Bart, you've been great. You've been great.
Oh, yeah. Let me just say, I am definitely a lot of people's hero until they get to know me personally. Then they're very disappointed.
Well, you're one of my new
But as long
heroes.
as it's superficial, I'm heroic.
Well, if you're ever in UK, give us a shout.
We'll take you for the best fish and chips. The best fish and chips. I promise you will
Guinness.
never.
I want Guinness. I want to taste the beer
get
battle.
Guinness.
When you're over here, honestly, email me. I'll pick you up wherever you are in the country, take you wherever you want. But I will take you to Whitby for the best fish and chips in the world.
Okay.
Agreed.
You know what I like
Genuinely.
about Guinness?
What?
Last time I was there, I think it was called the World's End Pub. I took a knife, cut your steak type of knife. I put it in the middle of a Guinness glass, and it just stays erect.
Oh yeah.
Pretty impressive. Pretty impressive.
It's
That
good
fall
stuff.
over.
No.
That's thick. And I can down a Guinness. I can down a Guinness and not blink an eye to show off.
You're not really an
But
American
afterwards,
then, are
I'm
you?
like, oh, my goodness.
You're not really American then, are you? Are you Irish? Are you old Irish, or where's your ancestry?
I don't know. I think Sibrel is French.
Right. Well, they can drink as well.
Yeah, quite a bit.
Anyway,
I think they shower in the red wine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, we'll let you get back to your day because for us it's 2:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Okay.
And honestly, genuinely, thank you very much. It has been mind blowing.
Yeah, it's been an honour to have you on, Bart. It really is.
Yeah, honestly, genuinely.
All righty.
Okay.
Well, mates, take care. God bless.
God bless
Thank you,
mate.
Cheers, mate.
See you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye, mate.
Never known my dad to lie. To get caught lying was worse than whatever it was you did to begin with. I remember going to school with long sleeve shirts on to hide the purple welts. You did not lie in our house, that's for sure. Dad had a really bad attitude towards lying. Excuse me again. Okay, anyway, this is the story that my dad told me on his deathbed. Project Slam Dunk was the name of this. President Johnson in 1968, okay? In Cannon Air Force Base in 1968, he said by the time he got there, that there was already 2 large hangars that were connected. There was hundreds of dump trucks that came in and dumped sand and stone, and cement powder was powdered over the top of all that to make it look like a lunar landscape. They had men that fashioned it into a lunar landscape, he said. Okay, I've never known my dad to lie, so this all took me by surprise. What's that all about? So anyway, he said that in front of the airplane hangars, was pole framing with large canvas tents that was concealing the inside of the staging area. Inside the staging area, on flatbed trucks, was uncrated the lunar lander that was reassembled back inside the hangars. All of the walls were painted flat black, and the ceilings as well. He was sworn to secrecy by the NSA, and they would put him in prison for breaking that oath. When Dad saw the moon landing on TV, he cried. He said he knew that what he had witnessed on TV was exactly what they recorded in that hangar. There was no reason for them to go flying around and everything. They had detailed high-definition photos of the landing area. There was no reason for them to go flying around to a different landing area that almost exhausted their fuel, except for drama, because everything had gone so smoothly. Nothing, so it had to be something. Anyway, Dad was one of 3 guards that guarded the inside of the front entrance. There was a list of 15 people who could enter. No one else was allowed by order of President Johnson. And here is that list. And I gave it to Bart Sibrel as well. And he checked out a lot of these names, and he says he can verify a lot of these people and what they do. And I come across a couple myself. Anyway, President Johnson, Neil Armstrong, Edwin Alden, Werner von Braun, Robert Emenegger, Gene Kranz, James Webb, Joe Kerwin, Dr. Thomas Paine, Glenn Looney, Dr. Christopher Kraft, Dr. James Van Allen, General Trudeau, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Simon, and Grant Norrie. Now, the only 2 that I really have information on is Robert Emenegger. Apparently, he did a lot of video work and stuff for the Department of Defense.